Hey guys, it's VaulSC here. Hope that you are doing well. So I have created a brand new custom mission for Infinity the Game N4 Edition, and it's called Dark Mode. If you would like to know more about the mission and try it out straight away without worrying about the commentary, all you need to do is go into the link down below in the video description. That will take you to my custom missions folder on Google Drive, which should look something like this. And you'll see this PDF here which has dark mode on it, and you just need to download that and you can read the rules like this. So that's how you can learn all about it and get the detail without the commentary. The other thing that has been updated is the Maps Workshop on Tabletop Simulator. So if you go to my Maps Workshop, if you don't already have it, I'll link that as well. So you subscribe to it in Steam, and then you can upload this map, which is already laid out with an example configuration of the mission ready for you to play and have a go at if you like. So that is all there for you to use. And in this video, I'm just going to be, explaining how it works and the theory behind it. If you guys haven't already checked out Table Game Fun Times, there'll be a little link right up here where you can have a look. In the most recent episode of the show, what we did is we had this little storyline where the characters in the show were coming up with a new custom mission and playtesting it, and it was quite fun. And what I'm showing you now is the real official proper version of it, which you can play. And if I do run any, Infinity events later in the year, then we'll definitely use this mission. So what is it all about? Dark Mode is a mission where the idea is that the objectives themselves kind of go away and become harder to capture later in the game. So they go dark, essentially. They can't just be taken for granted in the earlier stage of the game. And that kind of is meant to address the idea that in some games of Infinity, what people are doing is they really are just trying to gain control of the board and get as many kills as they can, and then after they've, created an insurmountable lead for themselves, getting the objectives later is really no problem. And the interesting thing about this mission is that if you just wipe out your opponent right at the start and spend no orders pressing any buttons, you won't be able to get a 10-0 victory. So if you're the kind of player who's trying to win a tournament long-term, like a big old tournament, 5 rounds, that kind of thing, then you might not actually want to do that. You might want to sort of give your opponent some breathing room, because if you don't, you're not going to max out on points, which makes it really interesting. So that's the general gist of it in theory. I'm sure if you guys playtest it, you'll be able to tell me whether we've achieved that. Obviously, as usual, I'm open to modifying these missions in future and correcting some things. So, you know what? Why don't we dive into the document and take a look? Alright, so first of all, it's got a bit of a weird configuration with the 6 dark nodes and 1 probe node, so it's in a bit of a hexagon shape. There's never been a map like this before, but hexagons are just so common in this game. It's surprising that nobody's really tried this configuration. You'll notice a sneaky little objective on the side of the building here, which is a probe node that's used for something else other than directly scoring. So this map has already laid out how the objectives themselves look. What you want to do is, by the end of the game, you want to control as many of them as possible, because you get 1 for each, up to a total of 6, and then 1 for having more than the enemies. So that's pretty straightforward. If I'm the player on the red side, so if I change color over here, and I'm capturing them, let's say that by the end of the game I've got this one, so grab that, and let's say I get this one as well, grab that, and I take this one off my opponent, for example, and that's all that I've managed to get. And my opponent gets this one, and unfortunately they were only able to get, oh, I haven't colored it correctly. There we go, apply that, and they managed to get this one. So if these are the only points scored, I would actually get 4, because there's 1 for each dark node plus 1 for having more than my opponent. So that's 4 points, and my opponent gets 2, and that's how that is scored. You can also get 2 points by killing the enemy designated target. We've all played in missions where that's a thing. In this one, the designated target is much harder to actually kill, but it is worth some serious points. So coming back to this example here, if the blue player killed my designated target, they would be on 4, so it would actually be a draw. So even if you're kind of losing the battle to control these dark nodes, you could, sneak an assassination on their designated target and even things up, and possibly get an additional point from our last way of scoring, which is kill more specialists. And unlike the mission Firefight, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. The thing about Firefight is that you don't necessarily have to take any specialists, and if your opponent kills more of your specialists, they get points, but there are a lot of classifieds in that mission. But the overall thinking is that if a mission really does require a lot of specialists, then you can sort of mitigate one player taking a whole bundle of them by making it possible to get points from killing them. And that's kind of the thinking here. You get 1 point for killing more specialist troops, and you guys are familiar with that kind of mechanic. No classifieds, of course, because classifieds in general are not very good. Deployment is standard, but you can't deploy next to one of these bad boys here, the Dark Node, okay? So, the Dark Nodes are laid out as we have described. Capturing one is just your normal willpower check with a specialist, just like any other mission. Got to be base to base with it, spend the order. The volume, as per some of my other missions, count as an S3. So realistically, if there's any small gaps in the architecture or geometry of this little thing, it's not meant to be. You're supposed to just not be able to see that. It's meant to be basically an S3. And these little floating things on top, they are just there for cosmetic purposes. You know, you can just walk across them and vault across the S3 as normal, right? Moving on, marked nodes. Now this is the really interesting one, and initially it might be a little bit difficult for you to get your head around, but let's just talk about it, shall we? So if we clear the table, and I'll bring in a new set. Okay, so let me just load this up. Both players have 1 turn each, and you look at what ones you got. So if I pick up this one here, and this one here, and these are the only ones that I get. And my opponent gets this one, and that's the only one that they've got. This is after we've both had 1 turn. It's the end of game round 1. I'm going to go and get some faction markers here. So I'm going to pretend that my opponent is Pan-Oceania and I'm Nomads, right? So what happens here is we look at which nodes we've captured and which ones we haven't captured. So Nomads didn't get these 4. All right, and Pan-Oceania didn't get these 5. You see that? So in red, I've marked the ones that I did get, and then I've put another sort of token next to ones I didn't get, and the same for the Pan-Oceania player. And what this means is that obviously I've held on to the red ones, but the ones with the marker on as the Nomads player, I can't actually go after them anymore after game round 1, which is pretty awful because now I'm kind of stuck. Like I've only got 2 objective points, maybe 3 if my opponent hasn't got more than me, but I can't really 10-0 my opponent very easily because for the rest of the game I can't really go after these other objectives, which is kind of interesting. In a situation where I took the first turn and I captured this node here, and then in my opponent's first turn, they got this one and then they pulled this one back off me, then the situation looks like this, but we'd take away these 2 markers. Because at some point I held on to that, and then my opponent had it, more recently. So we've both had access to that or had control of that node at the end of game round 1. So there are no markers next to it, meaning this is fair game for both of us. It's open season on this one. So on my turn 2, I can go on and take that one back, and in his turn 2, he can take it back, and so on and so forth. And we can just fight over this node. But at no point in the first game round did we control these other ones, which is why those have our markers on them, if that makes sense. Okay, there's some examples of that in these rules as well. Okay, now the thing is, after game rounds 2 and 3, both players must choose one of the locked ones that are locked for their opponent and unlock them. So let's say I'm the player that took first turn, and we've got this exact scenario here. My opponent sees that there's 5 ones locked out. I must now choose one to unlock. So I have to take away one of these pano markers. So I'm going to take away this one because I've got maybe some troops set up here and up here to defend this one, and I've already got it. So my opponent, to actually get any more points, they have to come all the way along here and take this one back. They can't go for these ones here because they are locked out and I haven't unlocked them. Similarly, my opponent must unlock one for me to go after that that had a marker next to it. So my opponent could unlock this one. because they've got some troops set up around here and here and here, and they want to defend it. So now I have the choice of gaining more by grabbing this one or this one, and away we go. Let's say in game round 2, I'm having a really good time. My opponent still doesn't get this one, and I manage to make more progress, and I capture this one off him. And I capture this one as well. So I now control those. And at the start of game round 3, my opponent has to unlock another one, so it's terrible. But I can still leave this one here unlocked because my opponent never managed to get to it. So that's kind of how that works. It might take a little bit of reading and rereading or watching a bat rep that I've posted on my channel to understand, but that's the idea. Now, because these nodes are so damn important, I've made it so that you can nominate one of your specialists to get a permanent +3 for the dark nodes. So at least there's some reliability in the first game round where if you want to capture the objectives, you should be able to get them, barring any really horrible luck. And that just gives a bit of consistency, because otherwise you have a situation where in game round 1, you're trying to go up to your nearest objective with your guy and you're failing 5 in a row and nothing happens, and it's just basically game over. It's GG at that point because you just failed too many times. This helps to prevent that. Also note that it makes it interesting because the player going first has the initial opportunity to kill the enemy node expert, so removing the enemy's specialist with the bonus, while at the same time maybe using your second combat group to grab a few dark nodes with your bonus and putting them in the bank. Right, so the designated target is in there, but the difference with it is that it starts in your deployment zone, not beyond 16 inches out there. So who can we use as an HVT? How about Mr. James here from Table Game Fun Time Season 1, and obviously he got turned into a Deva agent after that. But if this is our HVT, normally he'd have to go beyond this line out here, 4 blocks out, beyond 16 inches. He's got to be more than 4 inches from our deployment zone. In this mission, he must be within your deployment zone, so you can actually put him back here. Now, as per normal rules, you can't put him on scenery, but you can put him way back here, and he's easier to defend. All of your army is around here, and it's harder for them to get to him, and that's why he's worth 2 points, and it makes the designated target actually a bit more interesting. In normal games, killing that DT is usually quite easy because he's just stuck way out in the midfield, but this time he's a lot harder. Now, interestingly, he also benefits from hollow masks. So if your normal list has, a bunch of people in it, if you want to, you could pretend that your HVT is actually, a trooper. So I know I said I was the Nomad player, but actually let's go on the other side. So let's just pretend this is the Pano player's stuff, right? That makes sense, doesn't it? So we're going to put our HVT here, but we're going to pretend that it's actually a Fusilier. So I'll write down in my secret information that this Fusilier here is actually my HVT, and my opponent now has to figure it out. The opponent is going to know that the HVT is present because it says it in the mission rules, and the opponent's going to see that there are 11 models in this combat group, for example, but they're not going to know who it is. And I could even, have this represent somebody really scary, like Achilles or just somebody like that, and just fool them a little bit about the power of my army list. You can do whatever you want with it, but it is hollow masked when it is deployed. Okay, so for your courtesy list, if you're going to make one, you can always put an extra unit and have an illegal list for the purposes of the courtesy list, but still show it to your opponent anyway for that practical matter. Now, there is a probe node in the middle of the table, which is there for a certain kind of utility. It's right in the middle here. Here's what it does. So if you go up and use a specialist to press the button, and bear in mind, it doesn't matter whether it's your super specialist with the +3 or not, it's always just going to be a normal willpower check for this particular objective. And once you've passed the check, you get to choose between one or two different options. The first thing you could do is to cancel the hollow mask state of that HVT. So the Nomad player sends somebody around here, clicks the button, and they can go, right, tell me who your HVT really is, and they have to put it on the table at this point. So no need to discover it. It is revealed now. It cancels the hollow mask state, and that's something you can do here. And that means that if you're the player that has the upper hand in terms of material, and you've got free reign over the board, but not really enough orders to sort of just randomly start killing enemy backline troopers, you can spend some resources going after this thing and figure it out by that little revelation thing. The other thing you can do with it alternatively is do a little scan sweep for everything within 4 inches of any dark mode. So if I'm the Nomad player and I go click the button, what I could do is I could do a little sensor sweep here. So you got 4 inches from the edge of that dark node thingy. So basically anywhere around here, if the enemy has any markers or hidden deployment, they've got to reveal them. So what's the exact wording of that? Impersonation or camouflage state is cancelled, and hidden deployment must be placed on the table. So what this is all about really is making it so that players can't fully rely on the tactic of having a hidden deployment model like right here and just count on just clicking that one right at the end of the game after it gets unlocked or something like that, or just making one last turn ditch from going here over to here to the one that got unlocked and winning that way. It makes it slightly harder to do that, but still a reasonably good strategy to have hidden deployment. It doesn't remove that as an option. It just weakens that a little bit, and generally just makes it harder to spam the midfield with markers and stuff like that, because that's currently a very powerful strategy, and this mitigates that a little bit. Cool. Here's a really fun one. Feint is a rule where the player going second has the opportunity, after all models are deployed, to change the position of one of their troopers by a couple of inches. And you can sort of imagine how this might work, right? So say you've got your TR bot and it's happily deployed somewhere like, where's a good example? Let's say it's deployed behind this little box here, maybe. I think here's a good example. So let's say it's deployed there, but it's prone, right? Where's the prone marker? So that is the end of our deployment. The TR bot's there, and my opponent knows that they can now walk through the middle without getting shot. So they deploy their reserve trooper, which is like a bear pod. It's going to be like here. It's now just going to walk through and just bomb everybody. So I decide I'm going to use the feint rule to get a free move on this guy to pick him up. And he's no longer prone, and now he's actually going to get the chance to see through that fire lane. So that will help me as a defensive player. Or maybe I had a lieutenant in some sort of precarious location and I want to move him 2 inches to avoid some sort of template or impersonator. I can do that. Or maybe I just wanted to deploy a guy very close to the edge of cover and get him into cover or something like that. You can be creative about how you use it, but the idea is that it's not like spending an order. It's just a trooper which moves up to 2 inches. It's not going to move all your posthumans. It's just a single model. Model is the intention there, and it just follows the normal rules. So climbing plus super jump, all that's fine, and it doesn't provoke any arrows, trigger equipment, or anything like that. So you can, when you're standing up your TR bot, if there was an enemy hidden deployment sniper that can see it, they can't react. It doesn't provoke arrows like that. So it's a little tool. I've been thinking about this rule a fair bit, and we play tested it once, and as far as I can see, it actually isn't very powerful. You might think that it's super busted, but it's actually not the biggest deal, all things considered. And I think you guys will find that the more you play this mission. Lastly, it's a 3-turn mission as usual. Retreat is enforced, but it doesn't cause the game to end after 3 rounds. So there's no sort of gotchas there. And this last page, I've decided to actually do a bit of a write-up, just going into as much clarification and rules as intended sort of stuff as possible, to make the mission easy to understand and to avoid a lot of questions and things like that. Cool. All right. Let me know what you think, guys. Give it a whirl. There is the PDF is right there. It's free. The map is ready to go, or you can make your own maps for it, or modify existing maps to play it. So go nuts. If I get back into doing any more tournaments later in the year, we'll definitely be playing on it. And if you haven't already, check out Table Game Fun Times, which sort of gives it a little bit of a talking up. And hope you have a great day.